We've been talking about how to encourage our child's autonomy, taken from the book How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk by Faber and Maslish. And last time we were talking about encouraging them to use resources outside the home so that they're not totally dependent on you and your knowledge. And this last point that we're going to talk about on this particular issue is don't take away your child's hope. Don't take away your child's hope. And many of you are thinking, well, why would I do that? I wouldn't want to take away my child's hope. You don't have to tell me that. Well, here's an example of a way not to do it. Because what we have a tendency to do is try to protect our children from disappointment. And in doing that, we take away hope. So here's an example. Kid comes home from school and says to his mom, "Mom, I'm trying out for the lead in the school play. Do you think I'll get the part?" And the mom answers, "Look, I don't want to disappoint you, but why try for the lead when you haven't had any acting experience? Maybe there's a smaller part." Well, nobody can question her motives, not wanting her child to be crushed, and maybe it's better coming from her than going through the difficulty of trying out and then being crushed by the director or whoever's doing tryouts. But let them explore and experience. So maybe the mom can just say something like, "So you're going to try out for the lead. That should be an experience." You mean encouraging autonomy means setting our children up for disappointment? You know what? Life pretty much sets us up for disappointment. So why not let our kids not be crushed by us, but experience disappointment, and then we can be there for them when they come to us with their disappointments. But instead of trying to protect them, why don't we just let them experience it themselves? And that does help create autonomy. Or here's another example. And again, these examples come right out of the book, right from the comic section they have in the middle of the chapter to illustrate the point they're making. Daughter comes home, maybe she's a young adolescent, and she says, "I want to get a job babysitting." And the mom says, "You're much too young, dear. No one will hire you." All right, maybe she was nice. She didn't call her any names. But instead of that, how about something like, "So you think you might like to work as a sitter? Tell me about it." This encourages autonomy. This respects the growing process in our children. This is something that will help them experience on their own part of what it means to be growing up. And speaking of growing up, here's another example. Little girl says to her dad, "Maybe I'll be an engineer when I grow up." And an unhelpful way to respond to that might be the dad saying something like, "With your math grades, forget it." Yikes. Maybe instead of that, he might say something like, "So you're considering a career in engineering. Tell me more about that." These are just some examples, but we're going to do something a little different today. In addition, I'm going to set up some situations and you tell me what you might say or how you might respond with these new skills that we've been learning. The old skill of problem solving we want to keep, but some of these new skills that we've been talking about in recent weeks, like don't ask too many questions, don't rush to answer questions, encourage uses of sources and resources outside the home, and don't take away hope. So, example number one, the child comes in and says, "I was late for school today. You have to wake me up earlier tomorrow." Now, if the parent's going to try to keep the child dependent, then they might say something like, "Okay, honey, I'll set your alarm clock for you, or I'll come in and wake you up earlier." But if the parent's trying to encourage autonomy, what might they say? "This is a great opportunity for you to start using the new alarm clock." Or, "Here's a great opportunity for us to think about a way to solve this problem together. Here's another example. Kid says, I don't like eggs and I'm tired of cold cereal. I'm not going to eat breakfast anymore. If we want to keep the child dependent, the parent might say something like, okay, what would you like instead? And I'll make it for you. Let me tell you something. If kids are old enough to open a cereal box and pour their own cereal, they're old enough to make their own breakfast. So, what's a response that a parent might give to encourage autonomy? How about you give me an idea of what you'd like to make for breakfast, and we'll give you a shot at making it yourself? How about that? Or let's say the child says, is it cold out? Do I need a sweater? To keep the child dependent, the parent might say, let me step outside and check for you. Woohoo, it's too cold. You need to wear a coat. What could the parent say that might encourage autonomy? Why don't you step outside and tell me what you think? Or the child says, oh, heck, I can never get this button to button. Keeping the child dependent, the parent might say something like, here, let me get that for you. But to encourage autonomy, the parent might say something like, buttoning buttons can be challenging sometimes. Patience is important. Don't rush to help. Let the child work it out. Show respect for the struggle that the child's experiencing. Or here's another example. You know what? I'm going to start saving my allowance for a horse. To keep the child dependent, the adult might say something like, wow, horses cost a lot of money. How about I give you half of that to start off with? But to encourage autonomy, the parent might say something like, so you want to save up for a horse? Tell me about that. Or a kid comes in and says, Betsy wants me to go to her party, but I don't like most of the kids who are going. What should I do? Keep the child dependent? The adult might just give their advice, whatever they think it is. But the adult that wants to encourage autonomy might say something like, right, what do you think you ought to do? So, a quick reminder to encourage autonomy. Number one, let children make choices. Number two, show respect for their struggle. Number three, don't ask too many questions. Number four, don't rush to answer questions. Number five, encourage children to use resources outside of the home. And number six, don't take away hope.